So I have already used this picture before, but I'm using it again because it segues into another post that I want to talk about that piggybacks off of this. So this picture, this cartoon make-believe picture says, imagine how much propaganda it took to convince women that this is oppressive. And so we have these trad bros, these Theo bros that want to take us back to a time before women actually had the rights to leave, actually had the rights to be our own person and make our own choices. They want to go back to that time. It makes them feel better to imagine a time where women were second-class citizens. So we have Luke here saying, it's pretty wild to see how propagandized women are on this app, which is leading to essentially a depopulation agenda. Because right now, women have the opportunity to opt in or opt out of motherhood, out of marriage, because women actually have rights. These Theo bros, these trad bros, do not like that. And yes, I know that I used this picture as well, but this one is saying what you don't see in that picture is what happened the night before, where the dad is angry, the mom and the kids are both scared. But when this happened, it's not like women had any recourse, because women actually had to fight for the right to, press charges against their husbands for DV. Marital rape wasn't against the law until the 1990s across the board. You could actually grape and beat on your wife because your wife was your property. That's what coverture laws were for. Coverture law said, this is not a human, this is my property. From man to a wife. That's why there was the tradition of a dad, because at first, when you lived under your dad, he was covering you. Then he gives you to your husband. That's where the whole tradition of giving away the bride comes from. So now she's covered by her husband, but she actually belongs to her husband. And that brings me to this post we're about to share. This is a pastor, Pastor Steve Anderson, and he has a clip that's going around saying that if a husband beats his wife and then she calls the police because she got beat, because obviously that's a violation, if she calls the police, she's the one that's evil. That's what he's preaching here today. And folks wonder why the church is collapsing, because some of the things that these pastors are preaching are so anti-women, is so anti-humanity, because what person is going to sit there and allow herself to be beaten in the name of Jesus? And so, that's what he is saying. And then we have this woman right here, Monty Mater. She does a stitch of him. Like, she allows for this clip of this man, and then she speaks on where things are going and why these men are now posting all of these things or preaching these things, and how policy of right now, with like Project 2025, these MAGA people, how all of this goes hand in hand with getting us back in a situation where women can legally be beat by their husband and have absolutely no recourse.
Saying that your husband should slap you down, but if your husband slaps you down and you call the cops, you're evil.
So this is Pastor Steve Anderson, who has a very popular belief within Christian fundamentalism that a woman should not call the cops on her husband, even if he's abusing her. She should not divorce him if he's abusing her. And this is John Anderson, Steve Anderson's son, talking about the first time he remembers his father beating his mother.
And I remember it was Easter Sunday, and we were all standing out in the front yard dressed up, and I could hear it happening for the first time.
And again, this is very popular in Christian fundamentalism and Christian nationalism. So they rely heavily on the Old Testament, which only allowed for a man to get divorced and could get divorced for any reason, leaving the woman impoverished most of the time. It was Jesus who changed the parameters of divorce to protect women. But Christian fundamentalists at a core level do not believe a woman should be able to vote. They believe her husband should vote for her. They do not believe a woman should be hell-bent on pursuing education, because they believe a woman should get married young, have kids young, and support and serve her husband, even though this puts her at risk for elder poverty later on. They do not believe in female bodily autonomy. They do not believe in marital rape, and they do not believe on a core value about consent, because women have no agency. Your virginity and your body belongs to your father until it is given to your husband later on. But they can't come out and say these things because they wouldn't get the vote. So we see this politically in different ways. No fault divorce, which they were very clear in Project 2025 they're going to get rid of. They can't come out and say they're going to get rid of it. Women would push back. So what do? They get rid of the resources that help women leave abusive husbands. SNAP benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, social services, even domestic violence shelters. Even in Oklahoma, they're getting rid of domestic violence shelters to put women in positions where they can't leave. Things like voting. They're not going to come out and say you can't vote. They're going to pass the SAVE Act, which means you have to get a passport they know most women don't have. She might not have access to resources to be able to buy it. It's a poll tax for married women to be able to vote. And even in the political spectrum, because they need women's free labor in order to push their agenda, they need women's votes, but they can't exclude women entirely. So they strategically place women like Caroline Leavitt, Kristi Noem, so that women think, oh, we're included in this movement. What those women are, they are the spoonful of sugar that helps a bitter medicine go down, that these people on a core level believe that you are less than men. They do not believe in women's equality. They do not believe in marital rape. They do not believe in consent, which is why they don't necessarily care about having abortion exceptions for rape and incest, because they still believe at a core level it's the woman's fault, it's a man's entitlement, and that a woman's body belongs to men. And remember that marriage counseling within the Christian community was founded by Paul Popenow, who was an atheist, a white supremacist, and a eugenicist. And the only people that were radical enough to latch onto his ideas were evangelical pastors. And he taught them to teach that white women should never marry out of their race. They should not get divorced for any reason, that birth control was evil and against God's will. And he mentored James Dobson, who is the father of Christian family counseling.
I'm not saying that your husband.
This comment could be triggering. It has DV and SA in it. North Shore 2024 says, my evangelical father beat and SA'd my mother starting at age 15. When I was 2 years old, she tried to drown me in a bathtub to save me from a similar fate. By the time she was 30, she was an alcoholic. When she divorced him, we had nowhere to go because family and friends were afraid to take us in. Eventually, we went back to him, so we had food and shelter. She was not allowed out of the home without him, not allowed money for food or cigarettes. Dying was a blessing. Please know and understand why I do the work that I do, why I have the messages that I have, because I read stories like this where these women couldn't get away. This woman, starting at age 15, so she was literally still a child, was given away to a man. That's basically what happened because of religion. So, Americans here sit and look at Muslim countries, and they talk about Sharia law, and Sharia law is the boogeyman. When we have these Christo-fascists right now that are willing to give away their own children, just the exact same way, they are willing to beat their own wives. They do not want women to have control over their own lives. That's the reason why they go so hard with the anti-feminist propaganda, because they want to make sure that women have no recourse to get away in times like this. Ashley says, I'm so sorry that was your experience in life. However, I'm thankful that you came out of it on the other side to be here today, sharing what really happens when women don't have support or freedom. Thank you for being brave and sharing. Be proud of who you are, no matter where you came from. Murky says, I'm so terribly sorry that you and your family had to go through this. I hope you could eventually escape and flip them the finger by living your best life ever. Hugs from a stranger. T-Church PT says, oh my God, that level of control, power, and abuse is hidden and obviously tolerated or covered up, and how easily he can deceive with words to diminish and devalue and prop himself up. Should be imprisoned, but yet supported in the church. Of course your mom is an alcoholic to calm her nervous system due to the abuse. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope you're doing okay and getting support and love and really good therapy. That degree of abuse and neglect is in your body and mind. So Kai Susie says, then they aren't Christians. Christ never condoned violence against women or children. And saying these things is just like trying to help reclaim, maybe their image or something. I don't know. But until they get rid of or wipe their own slate clean up their own image, this type of thing will continue to be talked about. Christians tend to be up all in other people's business, trying to bring people along or whatnot, but they got all of these SA cases. They have these pastors being arrested weekly for SAing children. They have conversations going where wives are being beaten and have nowhere to go because the congregation turns a blind eye. This is Christianity right now until somebody cleans it up. That's what Rex is saying. They are Christian in title only. They claim him but do not follow his teachings in their personal lives. Okay, whatever. They're still Christians and there's no distinguishing them. How would we know if they're one of the good ones or one of the sucky ones? Queen QF says, and American women swear they aren't oppressed like the women in countries like Afghanistan. Eat This Chocolate Bunny says, white American women, be specific. But I don't know if it's just white American women. There are black women in cults like Jehovah Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists. There are black women in other, the other denominations that are just as overbearing and ridiculous like this, where they try to make the wives stay in these types of situations. Let's not make it like it's just white American women, because it is not. It is women that are born and raised in these patriarchal religions, full stop. The ones that give dominion to men to be able to cover them. The black women, the white women, any women that are in the church are subject to this kind of cruelty. Anyways, let me know what you think about all this. All of this goes hand in hand. So that's the reason why many of these things will overlap, and we will continue to talk about this. And this is one of the reasons I am agnostic. I am fairly anti-religious, especially the way things go. I don't care if they're not following their holy book to a T. What they're using right now is weaponized against women and children. So the current iteration of religion, I'm anti-religious. Let me know what you think about all this, though. Join the conversation, like, comment, and share.